Tensions are rising in Europe once again, and this time, Germany finds itself at the center of a storm that could shake the entire continent. For decades, Germany has carefully balanced its role as a leading European power, avoiding direct confrontation with Russia while maintaining deep ties with NATO and the European Union. But now, the game has changed. A bold new plan is emerging, one that Germany is quietly preparing, and it could have dramatic consequences for Russia's position in the Baltics. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to the Baltics themselves: Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. These three small countries sit on NATO's eastern frontier, directly bordering Russia. For years, they've been seen as the weak spot of NATO, vulnerable to pressure or even invasion. Moscow has long viewed them as part of its near abroad, a sphere of influence where Russian interests should dominate. But for the people of the Baltics, the memory of Soviet occupation runs deep, and they have embraced NATO membership as a shield against Russian aggression. Yet, many military experts warn that if Russia ever chose to act decisively, the Baltics could be overwhelmed within days. Russia's military presence in Kaliningrad, along with its forces in western Russia and Belarus, gives it enormous leverage. NATO's presence in the region, though growing, is still relatively small compared to Russia's rapid mobilization capabilities. And this is where Germany comes in. For years, Germany has faced criticism from both allies and rivals for being too hesitant. Despite being Europe's largest economy, it has lagged behind in defense spending, relying heavily on the United States for protection. Berlin's cautious approach has often been guided by its complex history and economic ties with Moscow. But the war in Ukraine has completely changed Germany's strategic outlook. Suddenly, the possibility of Russia extending its influence further west is no longer theoretical, it's a real and present danger. That is why, in a move few would have expected a decade ago, Germany is now crafting a plan to take the lead in defending the Baltics. According to officials and leaked reports, Germany is preparing to station permanent combat-ready brigades in Lithuania, with rapid deployment options for Estonia and Latvia. This would mark a historic shift: German troops, permanently deployed on NATO's front line against Russia. But it doesn't stop there. Germany is also spearheading a broader NATO initiative to fortify the Baltic corridor, ensuring that if Russia were ever to test NATO's resolve, it would meet immediate resistance. Military analysts call this the tripwire strategy, placing strong enough forces in harm's way so that any Russian attack would automatically trigger a NATO-wide response. The Kremlin, of course, is not blind to these developments. Russian media has already condemned Germany's moves, accusing Berlin of militarism and of forgetting the lessons of history. For Moscow, the image of German soldiers once again stationed in Eastern Europe is a deeply sensitive one. But from Berlin's perspective, this is not about aggression, it's about deterrence. Germany wants to make it crystal clear: the Baltics are not negotiable, and NATO will defend every inch of its territory. Still, questions remain. How far is Germany truly willing to go? Will this new posture be enough to dissuade Russia? Or will it escalate tensions even further, creating the very crisis it is meant to prevent? As Germany prepares to step into this new role, the stakes could not be higher. This is not just about Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania. It's about the balance of power in Europe, and whether NATO can maintain its unity in the face of Russian pressure. In the next part, we'll explore exactly what Germany's plan looks like in detail, the military deployments, the strategies, and the alliances that are being forged. And we'll uncover why Germany's shift is being described as the most significant change in its defense policy since the Cold War. Germany's plan for the Baltics is not just a symbolic gesture. It is a comprehensive military strategy designed to shift the balance of power in Eastern Europe. At the heart of this strategy is a permanent German brigade stationed in Lithuania, supported by NATO-wide reinforcements. But what exactly does this look like, and why is it so significant? The first element is permanent deployment. For decades, NATO's presence in the Baltics was rotational, battalions from different countries taking turns, moving in and out. This was designed to reassure Baltic states while avoiding direct confrontation with Russia. But now, Berlin has decided that temporary deployments are no longer enough. A full German brigade, thousands of soldiers, will be stationed on the ground in Lithuania, with heavy armor, artillery, and air defense systems. This means that Germany is not just promising to defend the Baltics. It is tying its own national security directly to theirs. If Lithuania is attacked, Germany itself is automatically involved. The second element is logistical infrastructure. Stationing troops is one thing, but sustaining them is another. Germany is working with Baltic governments to build new barracks, supply depots, repair facilities, and transport hubs. Roads and railways are being upgraded to move tanks and heavy equipment quickly. Airfields are being modernized to handle NATO jets. In short, the Baltics are being transformed into a fortified front line. The third element is integration with NATO allies. Germany is not acting alone. The United States, the United Kingdom, and other European allies are also strengthening their presence in the region. But Germany's role is unique. As Europe's economic powerhouse, its commitment signals a turning point. Berlin is also leading joint exercises that simulate Russian attacks, cyber warfare scenarios, and hybrid threats. The goal is to prepare for every possibility, from conventional invasion to information warfare. Military experts say this shift amounts to a doctrine of forward defense. Instead of waiting to respond after an invasion, NATO forces, led by Germany in the Baltics, would fight immediately, buying time for reinforcements from across Europe and North America. This is crucial because the Suwalki Gap, the narrow strip of land between Poland and Lithuania, is considered NATO's Achilles heel. If Russia ever moved quickly from Belarus and Kaliningrad, it could cut off the Baltics from the rest of NATO. Germany's plan is to make that scenario nearly impossible by reinforcing the area with armored brigades and missile defenses. But the plan goes beyond pure military strength. Germany is also investing in energy security and cyber defense in the Baltics. Moscow has long used gas supplies and cyber attacks as weapons of influence. By helping the Baltics diversify energy sources and protect digital infrastructure, Berlin is closing off Russia's non-military tools of pressure. In this way, the strategy is comprehensive, military, economic, and technological. Of course, none of this comes without risks. Russia has already warned that it will respond to any permanent NATO buildup near its borders. The Kremlin has threatened to increase missile deployments in Kaliningrad, expand military drills near the Baltic Sea, and even hinted at nuclear escalation if NATO crosses red lines. For Moscow, the idea of German troops stationed in Lithuania is especially provocative, stirring historical memories of World War II. Inside Germany, the plan is also controversial. For decades, the German public has been deeply cautious about military adventures. Many Germans believed their country should avoid becoming entangled in confrontations with Russia. Yet the war in Ukraine, combined with the vulnerability of the Baltics, has shifted public opinion. Polls show a growing number of Germans now support stronger defense commitments, though political debates continue about costs and risks. For the Baltics themselves, however, this plan is nothing short of a lifeline. Leaders in Tallinn, Riga, and Vilnius have been pleading for years that NATO take the defense seriously. With Germany stepping up, they feel more secure than ever before. Lithuanian officials even call it a historic guarantee, proof that NATO's Article 5, the promise to defend any member under attack, is more than just words. But the big question remains, how will Russia respond? Will Moscow see this as a reason to back off, recognizing that the cost of attacking the Baltics is now too high? Or will it interpret Germany's move as provocation, doubling down on its own military buildup? In the next part, we'll dive into the potential consequences of this standoff. We'll examine how Germany's bold step could reshape NATO, how Russia might retaliate, and what it means for the future of Europe. Because one thing is certain, the Baltics are no longer just a small corner of Europe. They are the front line in a struggle that could define the entire 21st century. The consequences of Germany's plan stretch far beyond the borders of Lithuania, Latvia, or Estonia. What is unfolding in the Baltics is nothing less than a test of willpower, a test between NATO's determination to defend its eastern flank and Russia's ambition to project dominance over its neighbors. And the results of this confrontation will ripple across the entire globe. For NATO, Germany's bold move is more than a military adjustment, it is a statement of unity. For years, critics argued that NATO was fragile, that some members were unwilling to risk confrontation with Russia. But now, with Berlin putting thousands of its troops permanently on the front line, NATO is showing a new resolve. This sends a powerful signal to Moscow. Any attack on the Baltics will be met not by symbolic protests, but by immediate, large-scale resistance. The US and UK have welcomed Germany's commitment. Washington, in particular, sees Berlin's leadership as long overdue. American officials have long pushed European allies to take greater responsibility for their own defense. With Germany stepping up, NATO becomes less dependent on US forces alone. This could mark the beginning of a more balanced alliance, where Europe carries more of the weight. But unity can also be fragile. Some NATO members worry that Germany's actions may provoke Russia unnecessarily. Countries farther from the front line, in southern or western Europe, question whether escalating deployments could increase the risk of miscalculation. If a single incident spirals out of control, the consequences could be catastrophic. For them, the fear is not that NATO will be too weak, but that it might be too strong, leaving Russia feeling cornered. And then there is Russia itself. The Kremlin views NATO's presence in the Baltics as an existential threat. In speeches, Russian officials frame it as proof that the West seeks to encircle Russia. Already, Moscow has moved to reinforce Kaliningrad with more missile batteries and advanced air defense systems. Military exercises in Belarus have grown larger and more aggressive. Russian warplanes test NATO's air defenses almost daily, flying close to Baltic borders. The risk of a dangerous accident, a plane shot down, a border incident, has never been higher. Beyond the military sphere, Russia is also using hybrid warfare tactics. Cyber attacks against Baltic infrastructure have spiked. Disinformation campaigns flood social media with propaganda aimed at undermining public trust in NATO. Russian state media paints Germany as returning to militarism, trying to stir fear in both Europe and Russia. In many ways, the conflict has already begun, not with tanks crossing borders, but with invisible weapons, propaganda, cyber attacks, and intimidation. For the people of the Baltics, however, Germany's commitment represents hope. In Tallinn, Riga, and Vilnius, citizens feel that they are no longer forgotten outposts on the edge of Europe. Instead, they are defended by the continent's strongest economies and militaries. For them, the presence of German troops is not a provocation, it is protection. It is the difference between standing alone and standing as part of a united alliance. Still, the question remains, what happens if Russia decides to call NATO's bluff? Would Germany, and NATO as a whole, truly go to war for the Baltics? The answer to that question may determine the future of Europe itself. If NATO hesitates, Russia could shatter the credibility of the alliance. But if NATO responds firmly, it could deter Moscow for generations to come. This is why Germany's plan is being described as a gamble, a calculated risk designed to prevent war by preparing for it. By placing soldiers, tanks, and defenses in the Baltics, Berlin hopes to make any Russian move so costly that Moscow would never dare attempt it. The strategy is rooted in deterrence, strength as a shield. Looking ahead, the standoff in the Baltics may become one of the defining conflicts of our time, not necessarily through open war, but through pressure, intimidation, and constant brinkmanship. The Baltics, once considered small and strategically insignificant, are now the front line in a global struggle between democracy and authoritarian power. For Germany, the decision to step forward is historic. It marks a break with decades of caution, signaling that Europe's largest power is no longer willing to hide behind others. For NATO, it is a chance to prove that Article 5, the promise to defend every ally, truly means what it says. And for Russia, it is a warning: the Baltics are not up for negotiation. The world watches as the pieces move into place. Will Germany's gamble succeed in deterring Russia, or will it trigger a dangerous escalation? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear: you won't believe how quickly the balance of power in Europe is changing, and how the fate of 3 small Baltic nations could decide the future of the entire continent.